In today's lesson, we're going to learn about slope-intercept form. If you recall, the slope-intercept form of a line looks like this. Y equals mx plus b. The slope is represented by the variable m, while the intercept is represented by the variable of b. You are probably more familiar with this form, where we have dependent variable is equal to the rate of change multiplied by the independent variable plus the initial value. In this situation, y is the dependent variable, m is the rate of change, x is the independent variable, and b is the initial value. In our first question, we want to figure out the equation of this line. You can either use the table of values, which is over here, or you can use the actual graph to figure out the equation of this line. We're going to start with the table of values over here. Now, before we begin, I just want to make a little correction. This 2x should be written as just y. So I'm going to just scratch that out. In the left column, you have the values of x, -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. We want to figure out the run over here, okay? And you can use mental math. These numbers are increasing by 1 each time. Over in the right column, you have your values of y, -4, -2, 0, 2, and 4. Again, we want to figure out what the rise is. And again, you can use mental math. These numbers are increasing by 2 each time. If you recall, rate of change is equal to rise over run. However, in our first slide, we already established that rate of change is the same thing as slope. So instead of saying rate of change, we can just say slope is equal to rise over run. We know what rise is and we know what run is. Therefore, we can substitute these values into our equation. And let's just go ahead and do that. So slope is equal to 2 over 1. And that just simplifies into 2. Instead of saying slope, we can just use the variable for slope. The variable for slope is m. So m is equal to 2. With our table of values, we've just calculated our rate of change, which is also known as slope, and slope can be represented with the variable of m. With that being said, we still need to figure out the initial value. A lot of students have trouble recognizing the initial value from the table of values. You need to ask yourself this question. When x is equal to 0, what does y equal? Okay, if you go all the way to the table of values on the side, you'll see that when x is equal to 0, y is equal to 0. Therefore, our initial value is 0. Now, instead of saying initial value, we can just say y-intercept. I'm just going to say y-int, which is short form for y-intercept. That is equal to 0. And instead of saying y-intercept, the variable which represents the y-intercept is b. So b is equal to 0. Now that we've figured out what the slope is equal to and what the y-intercept is equal to, we can go ahead and create the equation of this line. If you recall, the general equation for a line in slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. We already know what m is equal to, and we already know what b is equal to, so we can go ahead and substitute in those values. So y is equal to 2x plus 0. As I've mentioned on many occasions, you do not need to write in the 0, so this simplifies to y equals 2x. And that is the equation of the line. If you're not given the table of values, you can use the graph of the line, which we have over here. Easiest thing to look for is the y-intercept. That is where the line crosses the y-axis. If you recall, this is the y-axis, this is the x-axis. So therefore, the y-intercept is 0. So let me just draw a line showing you where that's coming from, because that is where the line intercepts the y-axis. Instead of writing y-intercept, I'm just going to replace it with its variable of b. So b is equal to 0. To calculate the slope, you want to look at 2 points on the line. Those 2 points are up to you. We are going to look at these 2 points. So this one over here and this one over here. You want to kind of create a little triangle for yourself, okay? So that is going to be the run, and this is going to be the rise, okay? We want to see how much has increased between 2 and 4. Through mental math, you know that the increase is 2. If we look at the run, we're going to look at these two values, 1 and 2. How much has that increased by? That has increased by 1. As we've discussed before, slope is equal to rise over run. Instead of saying slope, you can just use the variable of m. M is equal to rise over run. We already know what the rise is, and we know what the run is. So let's go ahead and just put those values in. 2 over 1. That easily simplifies to just 2. Let's take a look at what we've just done. We have figured out both the y-intercept and the slope just by looking at the graph. And we can do the exact same steps as before to create the equation of this line. The general equation is y equals mx plus b. We already know what m is equal to. M is equal to 2, and b is equal to 0. Again, you do not write the 0 in, so this simplifies to y equals 2x. Therefore, we get the exact same answer by using the graph and by using the table of values. In our second example, we want to figure out the equation of this line by just looking at the graph. Let's determine the y-intercept first. As you can see, the line intercepts the y-axis right here. Just for your own sake, this is the y-axis and this is the x-axis, if you forgot. Just by looking at the graph, we can easily determine that the y-intercept is equal to 1. And instead of saying y-intercept, I'm going to use its variable, which is b, so b is equal to 1. But we are not finished. We still need to figure out the slope of this line. What you want to do is choose any 2 points on the line, preferably points that are on the grid lines, okay? That makes it a little bit easier. So I'm going to choose this point, and I'm going to choose the exact same point as the y-intercept. You want to create yourself a little triangle, like so. This should be pretty easy. This is the run, and this is the rise. For run, you want to see how much these numbers have increased by. So -1 to 0, the run is 1. Now the rise is a little bit tricky because you're actually starting at 4 and you're ending up all the way here at 1. So you're not actually increasing, you're decreasing. And you're decreasing by 3. To represent a decrease, we write a negative sign. So -3. Using these numbers, we can calculate the slope. And I'm going to do that over on the side. So slope is equal to rise over run. Okay, instead of using the word slope, I'm going to use the variable of m. M is equal to rise over run. We already know what the run is equal to, and we know what the rise is equal to. So let's just put those values in. So we have -3 over 1, and that just simplifies to -3. Now that we've calculated both the slope and y-intercept, we can go ahead and put this into the general equation of a line in slope-intercept form. So that is y equals mx plus b. We know what m is equal to. M is -3, and b is just 1. However, you know that when you have a number with no sign in front of it, there is a addition sign or a positive sign secretly hidden, and we can make it reappear like so. Therefore, the equation of this line is y equals -3x plus 1. And if you recall, this line is pointing downwards. And when a line is pointing downwards, it is a negative correlation. And negative correlation means it will have a negative slope, which this line does have. So you need to double check that before you write your final answer.